Well, my name is Vittoria Chierici. I'm Italian. I'm a visual artist. I'm here in the United States. In particular, right now, while I speak to you, I'm in Eastport, Maine. And I would like to introduce one of my subjects, which is historical. It's about the School of Athens by Raphael, the Italian master of the Renaissance. This year is actually the 500th year since Raphael dead. So there are many shows around, in particular around in Italy and abroad about Raphael. So what we see here is a series, a cycle of paintings that I've done in 2016 in New York in my temporary studio in Union Square, and where I've been working for many months on the idea of transfer the modern art technique into a traditional and antique construction. The composition of the School of Athens is unique and particularly timeless because it represents in a theatrical way many philosophers and scientists of the Greek period, before Christ until the year 1000. I tried to work on the School of Athens with the idea of being in a contemporary world, not in the past. And all the problems that I had to face and the recomposition and the interpretation of Raphael's fresco, they are problems which lead me from the past to the present. Not just on a technical ground or even on a conceptual ground. So I want to explain a little bit. First of all, I did this work has been done on raw canvases, which means the canvases were not stretched. They were not thought for being exhibited, but they were thought for being like a process of research, They're not opera, they're not masterpieces, they are just blackboards, like a big sheets of notes where I study and I drew and I painted, I wrote on, and we can see in these films that I was taking while I was working. I was filming myself because my idea was to communicate what I was doing. I was doing a sort of a process, and I wanted to communicate to the others my process. So the School of Athens is a work of the Renaissance, which actually has been transplanted in my world, in my contemporary world. And I used different kind of technique. I would say mixed media experiment, where I used print, digital print, I used photographic developer, I used acrylics, oils, many different techniques that have been experimented, especially in the last century. I have the feeling that we can really look at the 20th century, the last century, as already an historical period where we can really learn a lot of languages, different styles, inner sense of being a technical help at technical devices. But there are also not just the technical aspect of reproducing this work, there are also some conceptual subjects. One of these was that most of the characters depicted in the Raphael fresco had not a model. They were portraits and of many mathematicians, philosophers, like Socrates, like Aristotle, like Leonardo. What Raffaello did was just to cast these characters as if he was doing a film nowadays, or a piece of theater. And he casted and he chose the characters according to a semblance. A semblance was not really the semblance of the features of the face, but more of the symbolic idea of the person itself. So, for example, Leonardo was depicted as Platone. And Platone didn't look like Leonardo da Vinci at all. This is an example. And Leonardo wasn't so much Platonic, but he belonged to a historical period which is called Neoplatonism. So all this is interesting to see how actually a person doesn't look like anything what we think about, even with the photography. Actually, a person changes every instant, and a person can be, the person identity can be designated by other facts that are not our semblance. So I consider the portrait, when I worked on this Raphael composition, I really consider the portrait as if I was doing nowadays something without a model. And it's interesting, nowadays we have the test of DNA, which is much more useful also in the forensic activities for criminal justice, because once there were those drawings that were considered forensic drawings of the person that you were supposed to be like, and nowadays they're not useful anymore. So nowadays with new technology, we don't need the model. We don't need the real thing. So it's much more similar to the Raphael period, in which you could recognize Platone even if Leonardo didn't look like Platone. By the way, the Leonardo face is not Leonardo's. Obviously, Leonardo didn't pose for Raphael. He wasn't even there. Probably didn't even know about the old frescoes. So Leonardo's face is just somebody who was similar to Leonardo because someone told that the description of Leonardo's face. There were not really portraits of Leonardo circulated in the Vatican palace at that time, where Raphael was working under the Pope Julius II. So all this has been told by myself, to myself, as if I wanted to tell everybody else. And it's in a series of films that I did while I was working.